Hi, everybody. Jen Hatmaker here, your host of the For the Love podcast. You guys, welcome to the show. Okay, now, if you've been around the show for any time at all, you know how much I love kicking off a new series. It's so exciting. We just plan for it for so long. We do so much brainstorming around our series and what we want them to be and how we want them to arc. And then we make this whole list of guests that we want, and we go beg them to come on the show. We just build a series with such intention and with such excitement. So getting to finally bring it to you represents endless work that we've been doing for months and months and months. And today is no exception. It's just a new fabulous batch of guests plunging into a new conversation that we believe, based on you and your feedback and what we hear from you, matters to us. So today we start a new series called For the Love of Community and Friendships. And I'm thrilled about it. It is very, very true that making new friends, and sometimes even keeping and maintaining friends in our 40s, in our 50s, is a challenge we didn't know to expect. This is a pain point, a really common pain point, for a million reasons. My life stage has changed and I'm lonely. The friends that I had in my last season, some of those bonds are loosening. I don't know what to do. I don't have any friends. I've been hurt by friends. It's endless. This is really a conversation that is common to our stage of life, but that I don't necessarily see a lot of robust discussion around. We're just out here in the wilderness trying to figure it out as grownups. So a handful of questions I've heard us raise, including myself. How do we make new friends at any age? What are the things that we can be doing to put ourselves in places to meet new people? Especially if we're in a new city or we have a big change in our life or marital status or family status that might have affected the fabric of our friend group. What happens when we have conflict? What do I do if I feel lonely? This goes on and on and on. And so this is why we wanted to build an entire series around this, where we could really parse out some of the big questions and pain points that we are apparently collectively experiencing. And so we could not be kicking off this series with a more wonderful guest. Laura Tremaine is here today, you guys. She is an author and a podcaster, really just an overall trusted sister on how we can identify and create and nurture all these deep connections that we are longing for. Her work has meant so much to so many people, including my own. Laura's very deep understanding of human connection and her very practical insights. And by the way, the inclusion, vulnerably, frankly, of a lot of her stories and friendship, both for good and for bad, for success and for her own personal failures, have made her just a sought after voice in this area for sure. Because creating meaningful friendships is not just about having a social circle. It's about experiencing true companionship and vulnerability and support. And it's these soul connections that can bring so much joy and fulfillment to our lives. It's what we all crave. So Laura released a book earlier this year called The Life Council: 10 Friends Every Woman Needs. Don't let that subtitle make you panic. Hey, go find 10 new friends. It's not like that. You'll be identifying the people in your own life. And this is a different way to think. It's a construct of the way that we consider friendships in our lives. And it's relieving, and it takes a lot of pressure off. And I think you're going to find it actually super hopeful. So I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so happy you're about to listen to this conversation. It's practical and it's tactile and it's lovely. And Laura is trustworthy, and she is my friend. And we couldn't have a better guest to begin this series. I think you're going to love this conversation, you guys. Please help me welcome the absolutely just delightful Laura Tremaine. So super always happy to see you for any reason whatsoever, whatever it is we're talking about, whatever city we are in, whatever thing we're going to go do. And today happens to be my own podcast. Hi.
I'm so happy to be here. How fun is this to do this professionally together with microphones?
I know. Golly, sometimes I just feel like someone is going to be onto this and the rug's going to get pulled out. They're going to be like, you know what? Guess what? For a job, you don't just get to talk to your friends and record it. Like that doesn't count. And especially considering before we started recording everybody, Laura was just telling me what she's coming to Austin for in September. And I was like, oh, how great. I'm going to come with you to that. So I'll just be your date.
Yes.
Just invited myself like right on the spot. Like, oh, super. Well, let's get 2 tickets.
Well, that's what friendship is.
It is. That's correct. Good segue.
That's what we're discussing.
That's a great segue. And you're so good at this. I love this content out of you. That's a dumb word to say. It's not like it's just content, but like, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. I have 10 things I want to say and they're all like competing. Friendship is such a deal, which obviously, this is the current iteration of your work in the world right now. So you are hosting this conversation everywhere. You are receiving like feedback from your readers and your community. And how old are you, Laura?
I just turned 44. Isn't that magical?
Well done. Look at you. You look like $1 million. You guys, Laura and I hopped on this morning and we can see each other. We're obviously recording this. And if you want to see us, you can go to YouTube. But I was just like, I took one look at her glasses, her lipstick, her background. I'm like, how dare you? Just how dare you? It's so cute. You're killing 44. You're killing it.
Thank you. I plan to continue killing it because even though I am talking all over the world about friendship right now, it's actually so vulnerable to do that because you're just kind of waiting for like, sort of like you said about it being a fraud to, be a podcaster with your friends. I feel like at any moment, all of my friends are going to band together and come together and be like, actually, you are a bad friend and you're not allowed to talk about this publicly anymore.
God, so real. Oh, gosh. I know. Once we put our little words out there attached to some real meaningful thing, at that point, we're up for hypocrisy. So it's so true. It's so real. But you are a tried and true here. And, I'm just north of you. I turn 49 this summer. And I'm just noticing constantly, like anytime I raise the flag in my community, on my online community about friendship at our age, it is a pain point. Universally, like, yes, there are always going to be those people like, these are my ride or die since second grade. That is a beautiful story and it happens, but like, it's like so interesting to see this really common struggle, but just does not get a lot of airtime. And so once you like open up the conversation window for it, people are like, who will talk about this with me? Like, who can help me here? And it's you. So let's start here before we kind of really drill in to some of your ideas. Talk a little bit about you, your story, where you are in the world and your people and your life that somehow brought you to a point of being pretty passionate about this topic.
Okay, well, I grew up in a teeny tiny town in Oklahoma, and that matters to this story because I think how we grow up and how we think about friendship and community and relationship like affects how we think about it, obviously midlife, especially if we feel like, imbalanced in some way. Look at how our friendships first started or what relationship felt like for us when we were super young. So growing up in a small town for me with like a really involved youth group. I went to summer camp. Eventually, I went to OU and joined a sorority. So like the first 20 years of my life, which I don't think is a super uncommon story, friendship was like served up to me on a platter. Like, sure, when you're in elementary school, you're taught like how to make friends, like share and be kind and sort of those basic things. But I never really had to put out an enormous amount of effort because in a small town, you know everyone from cradle to grave. In a college community, in a sorority, you know,
it's baked into the sauce.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. Yeah.
You know, summer camp is all the kumbaya of connection. And so when I moved after college, I moved to Los Angeles, sight unseen. I had never been here and I knew not one single soul.
I love this part of your story. I just do.
Well, you know, I was chasing Hollywood. I was doing this, you know, 22-year-old thing. And when I did that, I was shocked, I tell you, that friends did not arrive on my doorstep as they had the rest of my life. And you
didn't become best friends with your apartment mates like Melrose Place. Like they lied. They lied to us about that.
No. And there's a lot of factors to that. One being, I think Los Angeles is actually a particularly hard city to make connections in. So that's one element of it, which is part of this conversation too. There are like regional differences to this friendship conversation.
Good point.
So I think Los Angeles is hard in some ways. And then also, you know, like I was at the time, I was like a conservative sorority girl in like a liberal hippie land of also glamour. Like I didn't feel like I fit anywhere. So there was other factors about why I didn't make connections right away. But basically I entered into a very lonely season. I started working in film and television. I would make friends at work, but as soon as that show was over, because that's the nature of working in Hollywood, when a show or project or movie is over, like everyone scatters and disappears. It was really hard for me to like hold on to friends that I made and felt really like in the trenches with for 3 months. And then I would literally not see them again for years. So from that to then, you know, getting married and starting a family. And my husband and I are 13 years apart. He's 13 years older than me. So we did not have natural couple friends. We didn't have friends that had babies at the same time we did. We either had friends who kids were way older, or a lot of my friends hadn't started families yet. So I just could not find my friendship footing for like almost all of my 20s. Now I had dear childhood friends and hometown connections. And so it wasn't that I was just like desolate, but
they can't go out with you on a Friday night for happy hour.
No. Yeah. And they didn't understand my daily life at all because they were living a completely different type of daily life in different parts of the country. So when I started a blog, this was one of the things that got me out of my period of loneliness. I had a brand new baby. My daughter Lucy was born in 2009, and I wasn't working in film and television anymore. And I was like, I have to do something. I had moved out here to write and I was lonely and I was a new mom and a new wife. And I was like, I cannot, this isn't working for me. So one of the things that I actually did was start a blog. Now, the blog was sort of a lifestyle blog where I blogged about all kinds of things. But one of the 50 things that I wrote about back then was this time of loneliness, was being lonely. And that was the thing.
Totally.
That people always connected with. It was not my Hollywood life.
That's right. Yeah, but what about my glamorous party I just went to, guys? Yes. They're like, tell us about your friendship sadness. Same. Yeah,
please. Can we get back to your sadness? So I did write about that off and on for years. And actually starting the blog is one of the things that alleviated that loneliness for me, because I made online friends that then translated into real life friendships.
Oh, since 2009, 2010, 2011, turn up.
Yeah.
Like that was the blog era. Many writers online are now my real friends, and that's how I met them.
I mean, it was life-changing.
Yeah, for me too.
It was life-changing. It was career-changing. It was like a real juggernaut of a time. But it always stuck with me that was the thing that people really wanted to hear more about. Now, as I got less lonely, it was harder to write about, or like it was just less interesting to write about, I suppose. And then I really honed in on a message that I'm passionate about, which was my first book, Share Your Stuff, I'll Go First, which is basically about sharing yourself in order to build connection. I harped on that message for years online and in the book and on my own podcast, which is great. I love that message. But the sort of underpinning of that message is like, okay, great. We're going to share our stuff. Who do we share our stuff to?
To whom? That's right. Where do those people come from? Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so you go back one step.
I feel very ill-equipped to write a book about friendship, but the friendship material that was out there was like academic or research-based, which is amazing. But that's, first of all, not who I am. And second of all, kind of not what I needed. Like, there's also amazing friendship memoirs, which I really love. Like, there is stuff out there about friendship, but there wasn't anything out there that was sort of like, here's how you can think about this. Like, you can have all the data about why we connect or don't connect or how many people we can reasonably connect with. Like, there's data, and then there's like, okay, but actually real life. Like, what is going to fulfill me? What is going to make me feel like less lonely or less disappointed in my friends or in myself as a friend? Like, I needed a way to sort of think about it. And so this book, The Life Council, was born out of my own experience of loneliness, not seeing anyone else talk about it like this. And then lastly, and kind of most importantly for how it unfolded, was that during the pandemic or right before the pandemic, which brought up so much friendship stuff, right?
Totally. For everyone.
I personally had a few really major friendship mess ups. Like, I mucked it up, which like really added to me feeling ill-equipped to write a book about friendship. But I was like, I have to get control of sort of my own friendship landscape. And so I spent a couple of years like sort of doing that in my own relationships and thinking about it and all of this. And what came out of all that was the Life Council, a new way to sort of think about your friendships that makes you feel like not like you're blowing it or not like you're a loser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, Laura, for people who haven't read it yet or haven't listened to you talk about it, if you were just going to sort of high level the Life Council, like this was my basic thesis. This is what I'm presenting. This is the structure in which I'm like, let's talk about it in this way. How would you describe it?
I would describe it as looking at your friendships as the way a company would look at a board of directors. When you have a board of directors for a company, you stack it with like one person who's really good at finances and one person who's really creative and one person who has a lot of experience and one person who's good at HR. You would sort of diversify those people to help your company thrive, right? In the Life Council, I wanted us to look around at the friends we already have. This is not, a direction to go make 10 new friends. Look around at the people in your life, and instead of feeling like, dadgummit, Sally always disappoints me. She never texts me back, whatever. Look and be like, you know what Sally is amazing at? Girl can put together a party. She can put together a weekend. She is amazing. I'm going to love her for that. Or my work friend who I like her, but like, we're not going to see each other on the weekends. Think of that as like, how amazing is it that I have someone to eat lunch with every day at work? So it's looking at these people and putting them on a metaphorical life council of like, this is what people are bringing into my life. This is what their strengths are. And then also seeing for your own self what your strength is on other people's life councils. So instead of feeling like I have to be an amazing work friend and an amazing party friend and a nurturer and all the things, being like, I am not all of those things.
Yeah.
This is what I am. And this is who I am going to be to you. And this gives us both freedom, but we're just going to hone in on our strengths. So in the book, I lay out 10 friends every woman needs as like archetypes, like a work friend, an old friend, fellow obsessive, a battle buddy. Like I sort of make these archetypes and then I share who those people are in my life.
Yeah.
But you do not, as a reader, have to follow my exact people. Like if you don't work in a traditional setting, you're not going to have a business bestie. So adjust it to your life. The whole book is just meant to like get you thinking of like, okay, I keep spinning out about my friends. How can I think about it in a way that elevates us both?
I love this. I mean, that it makes immediate sense to me, even if I just think about my own self, because I can get in the weeds like, oh God, I'm not good at this, and this in friendship, particularly because I have other friends that are like that. They kill it in those. And I'm like, I suck at that. But I've got some stuff. I do some fun things. I have a couple of things where people are like, Jen's our girl. And it's just a generous way to consider not just ourselves, but our friends. Like, as opposed to, I think you should be all these things to me all the time. That's silly. It's impossible. We'll always be disappointed. Well, let me ask you this. Like, is there a through line, if you will, to some very basic key qualities that make a friendship meaningful and even enduring? Like, even though these are all different women or men, or they sort of occupy different space in our lives, is there some steady Eddie qualities that you go, these in a person keep us connected for the long haul?
Well, I talk about in the book that this is going to be a little bit of a different answer for different people, depending on what you value. Like, if you're a single mom, you might require something out of some of your friendships that, you know, other people might not, right? Like, or if you really value history, or if you know, having history with a friend and like you need them to know you throughout your life, that might not be a value to someone else. As I wrote the book, I realized that my through line was humor. I am serious and earnest and navel gazing, and I need people around me who are going to lighten me up.
That's so good.
And as I wrote about my friends, and I was just using them like as examples in the book, I realized every single friend I wrote about, I'd be like, she is so funny.
You're like, I have a type.
Right. I have a type.
Yeah.
And so I also examine some of the things that we think are really important in friendship and ask us to evaluate some of those things. So like, we might just toss out to your question of like, what's the through line? What really matters? And you're like, trust. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you mean by that? Like, yeah, you want friends who aren't going to spill your secrets, but you also might want friends who sometimes tell you white lies. Like, you look great, even when you don't. Right. So like honesty, trust, these things that we think are like basic.
They're kind of squishy.
They're squishy. And so you might realize, like, to even answer your question for yourself, a listener would like think, well, what does really matter to me? Because proximity has become a thing that matters to me. Like, I had so many decades of these long-term friends, like I described, which are amazing. They're my deepest heart sisters. But in the last few years, when I've made some mom friends that are local to me, I'm like, which was new, this was a new experience. I was like, you know what's amazing? When people live down the street.
Totally.
So proximity started to matter to me more than it used to. So like, I don't always think there is one through line of That's like good. What makes a connection or what's going to make a friendship last. It can be different in different seasons of what's really going to matter to you.
That's good. That makes complete sense. And that can shift, as you mentioned. And obviously this forced you to do a lot of self-identification. Like, who are you in the equation? Like, what kind of friend are you? Like, what's your deal? What do you bring to the table? What are you on everybody else's council?
Well, as established, I am not the funny friend.
Listen, somebody needs to be earnest. We cannot all be charlatans. I mean, we just cannot. Like, me and my friends all consider ourselves real funny types. And I'm like, this is obnoxious. Like, we need somebody to come in here with a tender heart. Somebody needs to keep us on the rails. We are mean. So I'm just saying there is a place for earnest.
That is me. I will say on my own life counsel of the actual life counsel friends that I write about, I am the old friend. I feel like that is one of my strengths is that I will be friends with you for a very long time.
That is a strength.
And there's a place for seasonal friends, you know, friends you had when your babies or toddlers, friends that are moms on the sports team with you or whatever, like very seasonal friends. I think that we don't value those enough. I read about that in the book too, that is something that I think we should see as not dismissive, but almost like, no, like this is companionship.
Totally.
in whatever this thing is I'm doing. Even if it's one trip, I'm on a trip with someone and we are going to connect for this trip. And then maybe we will never speak again.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's all right.
There's still value there. Right.
Yeah. But in general, I think I lend towards old friends. I know people for years.
I love this. That's a beautiful quality. I have two, not a huge group, but a handful of really old friends going back, way back. And having friends with like institutional memory with you, like inside the institution of like friendship, it's just, you can't duplicate it. Like when they knew you when you were 18, like that is something precious. That if that's who you are in the equation, that is a valued member of the council for sure. I know it is for me.
Okay, but yes, I think old friends get all the glory for all the reasons. Like it's so important and amazing. However, as I was writing this book and looking at my own life, I am like going to champion the new friend. And here is why. The new friend, when you make a new friend, and sometimes you're like, I do not have the energy for a new friend. Like, I don't want to fill her in on the backstory. I don't want to put the effort into like this weird friendship dating dance we have to do at the beginning. Like, it seems exhausting. I get why people are like, I do not have the capacity for new friends. But here is what a new friend brings to the table that gets overlooked. A new friend is meeting you where you are right now, and probably you have fought really hard to become the person that you are right now, and they are not holding you to some past standard. Like, it's great to have the friends who knew you when. It's also great to have friends who are like, I had no idea you used to be that way. And I'm glad we're meeting at this stage.
Yes.
You know?
It's so true. You are so right. I love this. This is, I think, the beauty of the concept, which is these aren't hierarchies. We're not ranking them and giving them grades. These are the friends in a life that make up a really beautiful adult sort of female relational cohort. And it's incredible.
You guys, one thing I consistently get questions about has to do with parenting our LGBTQIA plus kids. Now, if you know the story of my family, we've been here with my daughter, and there's so many things I wish I would have done differently all those years ago. If I could go back and teach myself sooner, gosh, you guys, I would. It matters so much to me to share what I learned. So I put together a really special me course for moms and dads and parents and guardians of LGBTQIA plus tweens and teens. But you guys, honestly, it's not just for parents. It's for anyone re-examining what they've been taught, for anyone asking new questions. It is for allies. It is for siblings and friends. And very seriously, it is for pastors and faith leaders and small group facilitators in your churches, right? Who would like a faithful path forward here. I've compiled everything you have ever asked me into this one e-course. And of course, I have two incredible guests. First is Sarah Cunningham, founder of Free Mom Hugs and the mom of a gay son who has so much lived wisdom. And she is just incredible in this course. We also have Isaac Archuleta, LPC. He is a licensed counselor and the founder of I Am Clinic, which is LGBTQ therapy. He specializes in the emotional and mental care of LGBTQIA plus kids and their families. And he brings so much expert advice. And plus, which he shares with us, has a really compelling personal story of his own that honestly, I can't wait for you to hear. It's super emotional. So if in any way you are interested in creating a kinder and safer world for our kids, because all kids are our kids, or if you feel alone or lost and don't know what to do next, this is your course. You guys head over to mecourse.org, okay? That's mecourse.org to learn more and register. A fun thing for me that I've told you about before is that my 3 a.m. nighttime brain wants to wake up and think about, well, like health insurance premiums that are due and my children's future and the state of all of our cars and what I said that one time to that one person. But also a fun thing for me now is that 3 a.m. brain is no longer invited to the party because of one thing: Focal CBD sleep gummies. They have changed my sleep game entirely. First of all, they work in that they have solved my middle of the night problems, but they're also yummy, like healthy sleep candy. I don't know what kind of magic makes them so effective because I'm not a scientist, but there's no weirdness in these. There's nothing bad. It's only good stuff only. Okay. So maybe you are a champion sleeper. If so, congratulations. And you just need a little focus during the day. Guess what? Focal has daytime gummies too. So I've got a code for you. If you want to change your brain game, For the Love is your code to get 20% off at focal.com. But really, sleep is priceless. So you can thank me later. So that's Focal, FOCL.com. And your code is For the Love for 20% off.
I'm curious, like, talk to the woman listening who's hearing our conversation and sort of you're talking about identify essentially the type of friend your friends are in your life and what they bring to the table and what you can celebrate their presence in your life for and what makes them special to you. And these are all can be parsed out and really distinctive from each other. Talk to the woman who's like, I don't have 10 friends to apply an identification metric to. I don't have 2. Like, how does the life council serve her and what can she learn and what can she take away and what do you have to offer the one who's like, I'm brand new in a city, or I don't know, it's just weird. The older we get and our lives are shifting around and we're exiting stages and entering new ones, which sometimes means a sea change in friendship. There's a million reasons why what might have been once a stable friendship cabal loses some of its structure or its connective tissue. And we just find ourselves going, what now?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well,
that was a lot. I threw a lot. Just pick up some threads wherever you want out of that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, 2 things, because I do write about friendship breakups and friendship ending, but I'm going to put a pin in that for a second to talk about the woman who like feels like a little overwhelmed by the tagline of this book, which is 10 friends every woman needs. So don't see that and think, oh yeah, this is not for me. I've never had 10 friends. I don't even want 10 friends, or this makes me feel lonelier than I did before to even think about 10 friends. The 10 friends that I write about are over the course of your life. So some of them, as I've already described, are specifically seasonal. So there's nothing about this book or this concept that is like forcing you to go out and make 10 new friends.
Sure.
I think that's ridiculous. You're trying to look at the existing landscape and see value in the people around you that maybe you haven't elevated to the status of friend, because we have a specific way we think about friends. Like, friends can be told our deepest secrets, or friends, will pick up our kids from carpool in an emergency, or, we think friend has this certain amount of weight to it. And I'm like, you know what? Your neighbor, you do not have to have heart-to-hearts with your neighbor, but it is an intimacy to live on the same street.
That's good.
And you can see one another in an emergency, or you have the same concerns about what's happening in your neighborhood or whatever. So that is a person that can be on your life council due to the proximity. Yes. You're not going to tell them your traumas. Uh-huh. So a person who's like, I only have 2 friends. Okay, well, you might only have 2 people that you can have heart-to-heart with, or that you would call in the middle of the night if needed. But you know more than 2 people. Okay, you do. So if you're unsatisfied with thinking you only have 2 friends, then I'm encouraging you to look around and be like, there are other people in your life that you're not seeing for who they are. And I also want you to have enough courage to see yourself as that in other people's life. Like, I am a valuable member of this street, or of this work team, or whatever it is that looks like in your life. So that person who is reading the book and feeling like, I'm lonely, but this feels like too much for me. There's so much in the book for you to like grab onto and realize like, oh, this is a role I already fill or that's already filled for me. And I just wasn't seeing it this way. Or you might be reading and thinking, this is actually who I need. Like one of the most popular life counsel seats is the fellow obsessive. All it is a friend who's obsessed with the same thing you are.
Love it.
Again, you do not have to heart with that person, but you can deep dive with them for 3 hours on
about
the
your
obsession.
thing.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You might read that description and think, that's what I need. And I didn't even know that that's what I need. And then you might sort of seek that out. So like, say your obsession is cooking and you don't have any other friends that are into cooking, then you might want to find a cooking class and find someone else that can geek out with you about food. And that doesn't have to be like a 911 friend. That is a cooking friend. So it's giving you a lot of ideas and ways to think about it. Again, this book is how to think about the people in your life. It's not a directive. It's not a to-do list. It's not psychology. It's mental. It's mental and emotional. So there's that. Okay, but then I do want to address this one part of your question that you threw in. When friendships change. So I knew when I was going to write a book about friendship that I was going to have to address friendships ending, because I had one of my best friends, that friendship ended, not by my choice. And it was as devastating as any romantic breakup I have ever been through. Now, this was a long time ago now, like almost a decade ago, and I didn't write about it till years later. And then I finally was able to write about it a little bit, and people came out of the woodwork to say this had happened to them also, or they'd had to make the choice, whichever. They had gone through a friendship breakup, and no one ever talks about how devastating it is, because it just is like, well, make a new friend or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, but when we go through a romantic breakup, we give our friends permission to stay in bed for weeks. We're like, go through all your grieving process of this romantic relationship ending. There is such a grieving process to a friendship ending. I mean, I cried. I was sad for years. And we never talk about that. We never talk about that grief, and that we're not dumb or lame because we took it that hard. Like, we miss these people. These people carry our secrets. They carry our hearts, our memories that we have with them are triggered in the same way as like when you see an old picture of an ex, you can see an old picture of an ex-friend and feel that same heartache. And I knew I wanted to write about that because I feel like when I had spoken about it before, written about it before casually, people were just like, would come in my DMs like weeping, basically. And I was like, we have to acknowledge this. So there is a section in the book, there is a seat on the Life Council called the empty chair. And it is there to sort of hold that space for friendship heartache that we've been through. But it is also, like metaphorically, an open seat on your Life Council for a new friend to come in and fill it. It's like the friendship version of leaving the light on for you. Like, you want to be, like Glennon Doyle teaches us, like not a closed circle, but a horseshoe of people. You don't want to be so closed off to new friends because you've gone through a friendship breakup, or, because you have an insecurity, or because you're just like a snob about it. I don't know. You don't want to be so closed off that you don't have a seat on your Life Council for someone else to come and fill it that you didn't even know you needed. Mm. So I write about the empty chair as like a memorial and also sort of
a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you leaving room for that. Again, under discussed, but ubiquitous. Like, and some of it is traumatic, and like a friendship, it blows up in a blaze of glory. And some of it is just a season of life, just shifts, and it's more of like a slow erosion. And that's also complicated. And it feels weird. It feels weird in your own body. And you think, did I do something wrong? Or am I doing this wrong now? Or, but when in fact, some friendships are absolutely beautiful and seasonal. And it's weird because I have this inner instinct to assign morality or something to the kind of slow disconnection between a person, because we are in completely different places now, spaces, phases, whatever it is. But also, it's not necessarily bad, right? Like sometimes nobody did anything wrong. I guess I'm trying to get you to say this is normal. And it's not because something necessarily just went really wrong.
That's right. I'll say it if you want me to, but I don't need to say it because you said it. And we've all experienced it.
Yeah.
And it's like if you can experience that from like a healthy energy, or if you can experience that from like a clawing energy of like, oh no, I have to fight for this, or oh no, I feel guilty because I don't want to fight for this. We have a lot of, like you said, morality tied up in like friends are friends forever.
Yes.
You know, Michael W. Smith coming in.
He was wrong. He was wrong. Nice reference, sis. Wow. 80s CCM. Let's go.
But maybe he was wrong.
Maybe he was wrong. I want to ask you about how you see, kind of going back to your first book, how you see the concept and practice of vulnerability working in here to the council, because I'm wondering if it's a sliding scale, because to your point, some of the friends that we identify in our life that serve a very specific purpose are our obsessive friend, where we're just talking about gardening ad nauseum and forever until everybody else's ears bleed around us. Or it's our neighbor who we're friends in sort of like a same street context. So how do you see vulnerability as a person for whom I think we can agree that our deepest relationships require it?
Right.
What does this look like here?
So, you know, we've talked kind of a lot about the value of maybe shallower friends, maybe surface level friends.
There's a place.
There's a place.
Yeah.
But to feel like that deepest fulfillment, like soul to soul contact, it is going to require sharing your stuff, which is my neon sign and also my first book. I learned this not only because Brene Brown taught it to us, but also because this is what it required in my own life. After my sort of lengthy years of loneliness, when I started to connect with people was when I started that blog. Now, at the time, for whatever reason, I felt more comfortable sharing myself on a screen than I did in person. But I learned the lesson pretty quickly that it requires putting yourself out there with people. It doesn't mean that you have to, you're not going to start at like ground zero. Like, here's my deepest, darkest thoughts. You know, it's a stair step into vulnerability, but you cannot get past it. There is no exception. There is no way around it. You have to be able to share yourself in whatever is, you know, different personality types have different like levels of vulnerability. It is not hard for me to be vulnerable, but I have friends where it is like pulling teeth to make them say something heartfelt. And so I like really recognize that that is needed and you just can't get around it. And here's what I think happens to women mostly. It's not that they don't want to be vulnerable or whatever. It's because as life marches on, you naturally stop sharing your stuff for all kinds of valid reasons. They feel valid at the time, right? Like you don't want to like spill it all on social media because you have a career, a job you have to protect. Like you don't want to get fired over it. You don't want to raise your hand at book club or, you know, whatever that you're in person and say, hey, like my marriage isn't going great, because all of these people in that book club, they know your husband or they're in their community with you and you're trying to protect your family institution. You don't want to talk about your kids' struggles because you don't want to embarrass your kids. Like, so slowly over time, we whitewash ourselves because we're trying to protect people or ourselves or a job. It's really valid. It's really understandable how it happens. But then we get to whatever, 40, and we're like, why doesn't anybody know me? Why do I not even know myself? Like, I have been so pleasing. I have been so go with the flow, or I like all the same things everyone else likes because that's what's popular, and that seems like the path of least resistance. And like in a busy world with babies and work and whatever, like I'm just not going to cultivate a hobby. Like I'm just not.
I'm sorry, world. No, I refuse.
And so we get to the middle of life and we haven't shared our stuff. We haven't become the fullest extent of ourselves. And it was so well intentioned, but it leads to loneliness and, mental health stuff, depression and isolation. And throw on a pandemic, that makes it worse. Throw on screen time. We're all on our phones all the time. That makes it worse. Like all these factors of our modern life makes this sort of evolution even worse. And so when I'm like preaching, share your stuff to people, that of course ties into the friendship conversation also, I'm like, this is a practice. Sharing your stuff is a practice like meditation or yoga or whatever. You are going to have to raise your hand in your, friendship circle in real life, or you can do it online, like whatever feels comfortable for you. Because like I said, I was in a season where it felt more comfortable for me to share my stuff online. Now life looks different for me, and I'm more comfortable sharing my deepest stuff, in heart to hearts, like one-on-ones, or with a trusted group of friends. People are going to do it differently. I'm not trying to get people to share their stuff online if that's not their gig. And I understand why it's very scary to do it in person, but find a space where you can share your stuff, and then you have to practice it. And the more that you practice it, the more that you share stuff, even if you start small, or you start with something that's a big deal to you, but like probably isn't going to be a big deal to the rest of the group. The more you practice it, the more you're emboldened by, speaking your truth and saying the thing and letting your true self shine and your insecurities come out, and like just letting yourself be. The more you do it, the more you start to feel more yourself. This is a walk towards yourself.
That's good.
And I think people don't think that. They think sharing their stuff is going to leave them naked, and they're going to have a vulnerability hangover, and they're going to feel less like themselves because they've put something out there.
It's not true.
It's the opposite is true. You have to do it to see that sharing your stuff, even when it's messy, brings you closer to who you are.
100%. And my experience backs up everything you just said. And in addition to it, bringing your own self into alignment, because the outward facing you is the same as the inside you. And that's just a value it's hard to put a price on. Like where you are not fractured.
Yes.
And you are not hiding or pretending. That is so exhausting. Even though it feels safer, it's not. It's harder. It's harder. It's more tiring, and it's lonelier because nobody really knows you. So my experience is that not only is it an alignment advantage individually, but vulnerability brings all the milkshakes to the yard. I mean, it is the way like other people go, oh, I'm drawn to you now. That draws me to you. That does not push me away from you. After that, to me, there's almost no downside. Yes, occasionally somebody mishandles your vulnerability. Occasionally they take advantage of you or they use it against you. Yes, that's a possibility. But in my experience, it's a teeny tiny fraction of what you actually receive when you decide to center vulnerability and truth telling in a relationship. It's one of the most powerful connective tools I have, for sure, and have experienced.
And when people respond to your vulnerability with not only just a me too, like I'm so glad someone else said it, that's amazing in sort of a big picture, moving the needle in culture kind of way. But when you say something and someone responds with like, oh, I love you more now, or I love you at all. This kind of goes back to what we're talking about with new friends. When you make a new friend and someone likes this newest version of you that you have fought so hard to be, how validating is that? Because I can think with some of my existing friends who I've been vulnerable with my whole life, I'm like, well, they're stuck with me. Like they have to love me. But when you say something new and people love you, that feels like, you're really moving towards who you're supposed to be, instead of, like you said, like living like the way you think people want you to be. And maybe that's not exactly who you are. That's too hard.
Demoralizing.
Yes, it's too hard.
It's too hard. Yeah, it's too hard. I had the energy for that charade when I was younger, but now in my upper 40s, I'm like, oh, I just cannot. Like, this is literally who I am. This is what the garbage I'm going through. These are the darkest thoughts in my brain. Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And the people close in take it.
Yeah.
Just as I take theirs.
I have just the thing for you. Jen Hatmaker Book Club. We are going on our 4th year of clubbing, and it is just one of my favorite things. We read the best books every month, thought-provoking, entertaining, fun, important, meaningful. I always love it when our members say they would never have discovered or read a book were it not for book club. But the real party is in our private Facebook community. People have made lifelong friends there, finding connections with other women literally right in their neighborhood and getting together with all of our local chapters. So when you're a member, you get so much fun stuff every month too. Of course, you get the book box with the book and a special gift and a love note from me. But you also get a whole bunch of digital resources like discussion guides, custom content, music playlists from our authors. That's one of our favorite things. I also host video podcasts with our authors from each month, as well as Facebook Live chats where you have a chance to get on Zoom with me for our month book talk. And you get special access to events, meetups. It's so fun. We are your people. Come join us. Use the code READ, R-E-A-D, for $5 off your first month at jenhatmakerbookclub.com.
I'd like to hear your take, your thoughts on inside these friends that we have identified as these are the people that make up like my full friendship life. What happens when we have conflict? Because we do. Like, we're grown, but it happens. And so what are your thoughts on navigating conflict, resolution, communication, all of that? Like, just some of the tactile friendship stuff.
Okay, so like I referenced earlier, I had made some friendship missteps years before I wrote this book. It was one of the catalysts for ending up writing this book. And it was brass tacks. It was the logistics and maintenance of friendship. I was dropping the ball so royally. Like, I would just not text people back. I wasn't holding up any part of my relationship bargain. And, there are seasons in our life where that you can't, you can give nothing. You are going through something. I was not going through anything. I was, I do have like everybody has stuff, but like I was realizing that I was like relying on just my own organic or natural instincts to be a friend. And some people are naturally beautiful at being friends. Not me. I have to put it on a to-do list. Like, I have 5 core friendship philosophies in the book. And the first one is friendship is a to-do. And I have to put it on my to-do list like I put work tasks on my to-do list. I have to check in with Kimmy because she had a surgery. Now, a better person would just beautifully remember to check in with Kimmy after her surgery. Not me. I will not remember. 3 weeks will go by and I'll be like, did she have that surgery? I don't know. So this was some of my missteps. I had a dear friend whose dad was very sick, and I knew that their whole family was going through an enormously difficult time. I did not check on my friend. I'm embarrassed to say this out loud. I went a good 3 months knowing that my dearest friend was going through a thing, and I did not check on her. I came home from a trip and she was like, where you been, boo? I mean, she called me out immediately. I was horrified. I had another friend who had done an enormous professional favor for me. She'd really done a big thing for me. And then she emailed it to me, and I did not respond. What is happening? Yeah. And then she called me out on it. This is a different friend, different scenario. They don't even know each other. Yeah. And she was like, hey, she used the phrase, the story I'm telling myself is that you either hate what I did for you or you don't appreciate it. And both of those feel like crap. So what is happening? And to me, those things were tied in that I was just not doing some of the basics. friendship is a to-do, you can lean into your strengths and be like, well, after Kimmy's surgery, I'm not going to bring her soup. It's not my gig. I'm not a soup bringer.
Yeah.
I can check on Kimmy in other ways. I can offer what my strengths are. And so honing in on your strengths doesn't mean you're abdicating all other responsibilities ever. And the work of it is required. And then to get to the conflict part of your question, because there's going to be conflict. I've now had multiple friends call me out on how I was not being a good friend. And they were right. I had another friend. This is how I start the book. The Life Council starts out with a story of a different, I'm just going to tell you all my missteps, a different misstep. I had very casually hurt someone on a group text. Now, I did not understand how badly it had hurt her feelings, but it was really bad. And I mean, it was, in her mind, friendship ending bad. Now, we were in the pandemic. Emotions were heightened. There might have been extra drama on all sides. But it was a group text. She was hurt. She was embarrassed. She was over it. This was a local friend to me, and I so badly did not want her to end our friendship that I created in my backyard the best date night you've ever seen in your life. I mean, I put flowers and champagne. I brought out crystals. I don't know. I had a blanket.
Oh.
Like, I was like,
wow. Yeah. You went for it.
I went for it because we were going to have like a big talk. You know, she was going to come over, pandemic, so we were going to be in the backyard. And I wanted her to enter that space and know that I was holding our friendship with a reverence. And I learned this from the friendship that had ended years ago that I already talked about. I had regrets for how I had handled that. You know, I had led with my ego back then and been like, fine, you don't want to be friends with me? Done. Dead to me. We're over, you know? And I was like, you know, I really wish I had, even if I couldn't have salvaged that friendship, I really wish I had said some things differently. You know, just like any other kind of breakup, I really wish I had handled that differently. I am not going to let this current conflict that I write about in the book, I wasn't going to let it go down like that. If she decided to end the friendship because she was so upset at me, I was going to give it my all. And I did. And when she left that night from my backyard candlelit moment,
sure, I'm dying.
We were still friends. You know, it wasn't perfect. We hadn't necessarily agreed, but she told me later that she had come to my backyard to end our friendship. And she left feeling like, no, this is salvageable. We need to hash through some things. And so, I don't think that answers your question. I'm just trying to give examples of that we have conflict. There's ways to handle it. There's ways to think about it. You're going to have hard conversations. Just like friendship being a to-do, some friendship's going to require hard things. I mean, just last week I was having sort of a heated conversation with a friend. It wasn't heated between one another. It was heated about a situation. And she said something to me, and I immediately said to her, you are being unfair to me in this assessment. And if I had not written this book and been thinking about friendship very intimately for years, I wouldn't have had the courage to say, what you're saying right now feels unfair to me. And she, paused, because people aren't usually like maybe that direct. And then she was like, I'm so sorry. That's not how I mean it. Now, she didn't change her opinion. She didn't reroute because I said what I said, but we were able to just be like, hey, this conversation appears to have gone off the rails a bit.
Yeah.
Like, let's pause.
Yes.
You can do that in trust.
You can do that. You can. And I applaud it, because the alternative is you letting that simmer inside your little brain, and you start getting more pissed, and building up some resentment, which you think, I'm going to bury this because I so devalue direct communication. That's such a deterrent for most of us. And then it starts coming out sideways, and then it starts being passive aggressive. That's the alternative. So you can either grab that damn thing by the tail in the moment and just say, oh, I feel like I need to tell you that this feels unfair to me in this exact moment. Nobody dies. Like, what that means is two grown-ups can go, oh, okay, you're having an experience that I'm not meaning, or let's recalibrate the way we're speaking or our tone. Onward. Like, this is healthy. This is healthy, it's
Right.
mature, and it preserves a friendship for the long haul. We're not
And
good at
it teaches us how to treat one another.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of being passive aggressive, we're teaching one another how to treat one another. Like, hey, this what's happening in this conversation means that subconsciously we're then being like, okay, well, we're going to communicate like this. It is dynamic affecting in your friendship. And that matters. We're always teaching people how to treat us subconsciously or consciously. And sometimes you need to be more conscious about it. Otherwise, you're teaching people that they can say anything to you. They can text anything to you because you're not going to call them out on it, or you're not going to be paying that much attention. My friend that I hurt on the group text that I then put the blanket out for, it wasn't what I said in the group text. I mean, that did irritate her, obviously. But when it came down to it, it had been years of perceived slights on her end.
Yeah.
Like that we're discussing.
Yeah.
That was the final straw for her.
Yeah.
Because she had never said, and it's not all on her. I misstepped. But like she had never said this type of joking hurts my feelings or whatever. No one had ever said that. And so
you're not clairvoyant. You can't read her mind. Like this is probably invisible to you. You probably had no idea she was walking around with the scorecard. I have done this on the other side. Been keeping a scorecard and somebody else is like, wait, what? Like, when? What did I say? Like, that's not fair. It's not fair.
It's not fair. So you have to call it out of like, hey, I don't like that joke or I don't like this when we kind of do this thing. I have one other story that I think is really important to say. A group of friends and I went to a brunch, a goodbye brunch. A friend was moving. And we went to sort of a brunch last meal together. And as girlfriends do, we sort of got into a gossipy moment. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were talking about someone who wasn't at the table. Okay. And to be perfectly honest, it felt like a completely normal brunch to me. I'm just eating my French toast and we're talking. Okay. One of the other women at the table said, and this was actually out of character for her, which may be why it stood out, but she said, hey, I don't want to spend our last meal with Julie knocking on somebody else. Like, let's talk about something else. And when I tell you that it whipped the rest of us into shape in about 2 seconds, because she was right.
Sure.
Like, I'm not like, this isn't like a commentary on
I get
brunch
it.
Conversations. But you can, in like a conflict way, or if something feels squidgy or whatever, you can say like, hey, this isn't working for me. And most of the time, especially if you're right, and in this way, she was right. Yeah. We were all like, oh my God, you're right. Well, who wants to do that?
Totally.
Let's talk about something else.
Right. And that didn't push away from her. You're like, oh, no more brunch with that girl. That buzzkill. Like, that's not how it works.
No.
It was an appropriate course correct.
Yeah.
In the middle of a friendship. And we're better for that, not worse.
Yes.
So, yes, I love this. That's such a great example. All of these are. In fact, the whole book is just full of examples. And so, which is useful. It helps us take ideas and locate them in real relationships in our real lives and find ways that we connect. And so there isn't an adult woman alive who would not benefit from this book. And so before we wrap it here, would you just remind my community, okay, because you and I, we've scratched the surface. I mean, we barely even got into it. Like we could talk about this for 70 hours and still not mind the depth. And so can you just tell my people like, well, where to find it, where to find you, where to follow you, where they can have a portal into this conversation in a more robust way?
My favorite place online is social media. My favorite place online is Instagram, where you can find me at Laura.Tremaine. But if you want to find my books, I've written 2 books, including this one, The Life Council, and my podcast, which is called 10 Things to Tell You. All of that is at lauratremaine.com. And I'm talking a ton about friendship and mental health and journaling. We didn't even talk about journaling, Jen, and it is my other passion.
Yes, exactly. And of course, that always makes me think of Jamie Golden, back to the original conversation that you and I were having before we hit record. She said the funniest thing about journaling. Maybe you're the one who told me she said this. how she like started. Do you remember, you know what I'm talking about in 7th grade? She said something hilarious because everybody loves journaling and everybody talks about journaling and everybody tells us to journal and all the journaling talk. And she's like, I wrote one entry in my journal in 7th grade, and that's the last journal entry I ever made. And I'm like, I laugh so hard because I have so many over the course of my lifetime journals with the first 3 pages filled when I was like, this is what I do now. I'm a person who daily journals. It lasts like 3 days. And Jamie said that. I'm like, oh my God, same. So I have a graveyard of like journals with 4 pages in it. Okay, I'm not knocking your passion. I'm just saying that made me think of Jamie yet again. So funny. It's true. Writing it down matters. I'm a writer, damn it. I know it. I know the power of it. It matters.
That's right.
Okay.
You should be telling people to write, Jim.
I know I should. Seriously. God, I need to put that on my list. Okay. Last question. You've answered this before for me. However it feels today. Like you probably answer this differently tomorrow, maybe. But Barbara Brown Taylor's question. What's saving your life right now?
I could give you so many answers, and this one might throw you for a loop.
Oh, exciting. I love this intro. Okay.
Stephen King.
Oh, no, that doesn't surprise me one bit. I know about you. I know about your obsession. I know about your dark proclivities toward literature. Like, I'm surprised 0. So carry on. Tell everybody else about this because they're like, Stephen King. I thought she was like this earnest, jovial type. I'm like, no, people. She likes a dark. She likes a dark novel.
It is saving my life, and I talk about it whenever I can because I don't think that people expect like, this like blonde-haired
totally
LA person to be like, let me tell you about Stephen King, this bestseller. I am a Stephen King evangelist.
Yes, you are.
As we are recording this, I'm in the middle of Stephen King Summer, which is a book club that I run every year. And that's why it's saving my life right now is because I read him and I want other women to read him. He does not write only scary stuff. If you're scared of scary stuff, he writes plenty of things that are not scary. When I read him, and I know that as a reader, you connect to this, there are certain authors or certain storytellers, nonfiction or fiction, that when you read them, it brings you closer to what the world is all about. And you're just like, this is why we write. This is why we read. This is why we're in the world. And I think that people look to more inspirational authors for that kind of description. And I'm telling you that Stephen King will do that for you also. And I'm in a summer of, book launch and travel, and I'm sort of reevaluating some stuff in my work and in my personal life. And I'm a little bit in I'm in an upheaval transitional moment.
Okay.
And when you are in those, you turn to what brings you back to yourself. And for me, it's Stephen King. He is saving my life in Stephen King Summer right now. And I'm unapologetic about it.
This is so you, and I'm so happy that you gave that answer. What if somebody listening is interested in being in the Stephen King Summer with you? Is it possible?
Well, it runs through August, so they can jump into Stephen King Summer at any point if they're listening to this before the end of the summer. And we are actually reading On Writing in August. Right now we're reading.
I even read that. I read that book. It's brilliant.
Well, that's a memoir that's about more than just writing. But right now we're reading, for June and July, we're reading The Stand. Have you read it? Well, it's life-changing. I mean, it's
just the matter-of-factness that you present it like, well, I mean, only if you want your life changed, I guess, read it. But otherwise, fine.
My biggest caveat with King is not that he writes scary things, although The Stand isn't particularly scary. The premise is a pandemic, so proceed with caution. But is that his best works are 1,200 pages long. Yeah, you're in it. You're in it for the long haul. It's just too much to casually recommend to people.
Totally. That's like an elite level. That's reserved for certain folks. But okay, perfect. All right, everybody. Well, you're the greatest. And now I look forward to our date in Austin when you come here. And thanks for being on the show. I really like how you live. I don't know if that's an okay thing to say, but like, I like the way that you live. I like the way that you do your relationships. I like the things that you care about.
That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me, Jen.
Oh,
like,
well, I mean,
actually, I'm going to write it down when we get off here.
I just mean it. I really do. I admire it and I respect it and I learn from it. And I'm so happy that I am your friend. So, okay, that's it. Back you go to those 1,200 word tomes or 1,200 page tomes. God, I can't so much. I can't, but I believe in you. Okay.
Thank you, my friend. It's so fun to talk to you.
Thanks. All right, you guys. Oh, there's so much more. We care so much about you at this show, what it is you're worried about and struggling with and sad about and thinking through. And this is one of them. And so we want this entire series to serve you well. And I think it's going to. We have a all-star lineup. And we're digging in to all these tendrils of adult friendships. And so if you would like more, go to jenhatmaker.com under the podcast tab. And I will have the show notes, the links, everything. And then, of course, I will put links to all of Laura's stuff, her social follows, her books, her website. She is a delightful person to have in your repertoire of input. That I can promise you. So much more to come in this incredible series. We cannot wait to bring it to you. We love you. We're so happy that you're here. Thank you for being such loyal, amazing listeners. See you next week.